Hello, everybody. I'm going to be reading from Zero Day, chapter 38. I'm going to cut it into two parts because it's kind of a long one, so I'm going to be calling this one chapter 38, part 1. The line of well-wishers had snaked all the way around the corner all night, out of the East Room and down the red carpet of the Cross Hall. Addie had been standing here for more than 2 hours with the president, the first lady, and her little sister. Her back hurt from wearing high heels, and every time a tray of shrimp passed by, the sickly ocean smell made her queasy. The gown she'd felt so beautiful in just nights before now felt like a straitjacket. Standing here, she was nothing more than a decoration, like one of the gilded eagles that formed the base of the grand piano across the room. Finally, the end of the line approached, yet another DC power couple, subtly Botoxed faces displaying their requisite mix of relief and concern. Addie didn't recognize them, but she definitely knew the type. The tailored suit, the Louis Vuitton wingtips, the dress with the pearl choker, high-powered lobbyists, lawyers, maybe wealthy donors. It didn't really matter, they were all the same. All here for their 2 minutes of FaceTime with the most powerful man in the world. "Honey," the president said, wrapping an arm around Addie's waist, "I'd like to introduce you to Brad and Rebecca Martin. Rebecca was one of the primary fundraisers on my presidential campaign." "Nice to meet you," Addie said, her cheeks hurt from smiling so much. The woman grabbed Addie by both hands. "Oh, Addie," she said, "you don't know how hard we prayed for your return." Addie's face started to burn. She couldn't help it. She was worn out, rubbed raw by all the hugs, handshakes, and fake concern. If people had done all the praying they'd claimed to, there'd be a giant hole in heaven right now. Maybe they should have spent a little less time looking for her, and a little more time looking for her, and a little less time reading the polls and holding fundraisers. "Well, I guess it must have paid off," Addie said, the fake smile pressed hard into her cheeks. "Here I am, just in time for campaign season." The woman's perfectly tweezed eyebrow arched. "Excuse me?" Addie just grinned wider and shrugged. Rebecca Donor, whatever her name was, cleared her throat and moved on to Mackenzie. "And how are you tonight, dear?" she said, kneeling. Mackenzie, who had spent most of the night with her face hidden in the folds of Liz Webster's dress, peeked at the woman, eyes wide. It made Addie even more annoyed. What right did they have to drag a 6-year-old out here? To make her meet and greet DC's finest, when she clearly would rather be home with her books and building blocks? Addie felt like slapping someone on Mackenzie's behalf, like grabbing her sister and hiding her from the limelight. "Well, I think she'd like to be left alone," Addie said. "Besides, she's too young to vote, you know." Rebecca Donor's face blanched. And she put her hand to her neck and clutched the pearls that coiled 3 times around it like a snake. "Rebecca, I'm very sorry," the First Lady cut in. It's just been a long night for Addie. She's not herself." "Not herself? What did they expect? She'd been gone 8 years, and right now 2 innocent people were about to be arrested because of her. Nothing made sense anymore. Her fists clenched so tightly, her fingernails dug into her palms. She was about to open her mouth again when Darrow came walking briskly across the room, eyes trained on her. He was wearing a black tuxedo and an easy smile. The heat rose in Addie's face. She couldn't decide whether she was happy he was headed her way or if she wanted to take her shoe off and throw it at him. "Hi, Addie." Darrow sidestepped Rebecca Donor and took Addie by the elbow. "Mr. President, Mrs. Webster, sorry for interrupting. Can I borrow Addie for a minute? The band is playing my favorite song, and the only way she'll dance with me is if I publicly embarrass her." Addie definitely should have thrown her shoe at him. President Webster laughed, clearly relieved that the awkward conversation had been broken up. "Well, I'm sure we could all use a quick dance break, Rebecca." He held out his hand, and Rebecca Donor beamed. Addie tried not to gag as Darrow pulled her away. "I'm not interested in dancing," she said. "Me neither," Darrow said. "I don't even know what the song is. You just look like you could use a break." Darrow pulled Addie around the corner into the appropriately named green room. She squinted, taking in the green oriental carpet, green chairs, and green walls. "Looks like somebody puked in here," she said. Darrow laughed, but Addie didn't. Her nostrils flared. "You okay?" Darrow said. He'd been watching her the whole evening as more than 100 of President Webster's donors, friends, and colleagues lined up for their chance to welcome Addie back. With each hug and handshake, she'd seemed like a flower whose petals were being pulled off one by one. All that remained were the thorns. "Am I okay?" Addie said. "Gosh, I wish people would stop asking me that. I'm not okay. I just got home, and they're already parading me around like a trophy, like they had anything to do with me being found. I wouldn't even be here if I hadn't escaped myself. Was anyone even looking for me anymore? I mean, my mom was back at work right after I disappeared." Whoa, Addie, slow down," Darrow said. "That isn't even true." "It's entirely true," Addie said. "But I guess billions of dollars can take your mind off your missing kid, right? Like nothing ever happened? Actually, more like the best thing that ever happened. You can't tell me my disappearance didn't help Mark Webster become one of the youngest presidents in the United States history." "No," Darrow began. Addie scowled. "Okay," he said, "even if it did, I know your father was heartbroken when you vanished. Everyone was heartbroken. Believe me, I was there." "Right," Addie said, her voice growing louder. Her hands were clenched in fists at her sides. "The only person Mark Webster cares about is himself, and the only security he cares about is his own. Think about it. If he cared so much about safety, why wasn't he protecting me that day? How was somebody able to snatch me away from right under his nose, in a building full of security guards and cameras?" In that instant, Darrow saw himself running through the halls of the governor's mansion, heart racing, searching in vain all the places Addie should have been. He could see the slant of light that illuminated her empty beanbag chair in the treehouse. He could hear the creak of empty swings. He remembered all too well the checkers strewn across the floor. "I don't know how it happened," he said, "but I have never forgiven myself for it." "What?" Addie said. "You were 9 years old. What were you supposed to do?" Darrow bit his trembling bottom lip. Everything he'd kept bottled up for the last 8 years came bubbling to the surface. All the feelings he had tried to push away, first by making the wrong decisions, then by becoming a classic overachiever, everything he'd done to forget and move on. "Save you," he whispered. "Dare," Addie said, her voice softening. "You couldn't save me then." She looked away and spoke quietly, but Darrow could still hear her when she said, "You can't save me now." "What do you mean?" he said. "What do you need saving from?" Addie didn't say anything. "Ad, you can tell me. Please, let me help you." "Nothing," she said. I meant rhetorically. You see, SAT word. I can fit right in." She sounded slightly hysterical. "Addie, listen." He took a deep breath. "When I was 14, I got picked up drinking with a bunch of guys from Southeast. There was a fight with the cops. My mother, she made it go away. Everybody else went to juvie. Lance, Daniel, and Nick. Their faces, scared and defiant as the police handcuffed them, loomed in his memory. They were probably still living the aftermath of that night, while he ate caviar in a Versace tux. He wondered if they ever thought of him, the rich kid who'd used them to stage his pathetic little rebellion. "Why are you telling me this?" Addie said softly. "Because I know what it's like to hide something from the world that you carry with you every day, and what it's like when there's someone holding it over your head to try to control you." He watched Addie's face for a flicker of recognition, but it still stayed in stone. It was now or never. Darrow sucked in a breath and dug in his tuxedo pocket. Wrapping his fingers around a small velvet box, he pulled it out, stretching his hand out to Addie. "What's that?" she said. "Open it," he said. Addie took the box, eyebrows arched, and creaked it open. Her mouth dropped. "My locket?" she said, blinking in surprise. "How? Where did you get this?" "I found it the day you..." And Darrow cut himself short. "And you kept it all these years?" "Of Of course I did. I know it might not exactly be your style anymore, but I thought you might want it back, Darrow said, heart beating wildly against his chest. Dare, thank you. Help me put it on. Addie held the silver chain out and turned her back toward him, lifting the hair of her neck. Darrow fumbled the clasp open and hooked the necklace in place. Addie turned around. What do you think? She said. Very becoming, he replied. Takes almost a decade off of you. Addie tried to smile but quickly looked away. Darrow's breath caught in his chest as he saw a tear roll down her cheek. How could she be so open and vulnerable one moment and like a stranger the next? But the real Addie was in there. He'd seen her. And she was scared. Of what, he had no idea. All he knew was that he wanted to punch everyone that had ever hurt her, to build a wall around her and stand guard day and night. With a trembling hand, he reached over and touched her face, wiping away the tear. Her breath hitched as he stroked her feather-soft skin, and he leaned into her, his heart pounding, and her green eyes fluttered shut. Just as Darrow's lips grazed Addie's, a voice floated across the room. Well, there's the guest of honor. Wonder who that is.